speaking to former Finance Minister Mariano Browne. Welcome, sir, to The Observer, right here on Gayelle TV and, of course, Facebook, Tigo, Amplia, Flow, wherever you can catch us. A pleasant good evening to you, Mr. Browne.
Thank you very much. A pleasant good afternoon to you as well. So
yes, indeed. Well, of course, we're gearing up for the budget. Of course, which is going to be happening later on, I believe it's in October.
Yeah, October. I'm informed that it should be somewhere around October.
Right. And just looking at some of the things, now when it comes to economic growth, you made it quite clear that they are based on economic models which capture the effect of variations in major variables that impact a country's economic performance, but not all the variables. Please expand on that.
Well, let's put it this way. Part of the growth, certainly what the central bank numbers would suggest is that we had some positive growth which came from the non-energy sector for part of 2022. But the real turnaround that started really came as a result of injections coming from the energy sector and the increase in prices, both to stream system. And there's always a delay impact when government expenditure goes up. That continues for a little while. The reality is that most of the other sectors, there's no real, what we would call endogenous growth, in terms of growth in the system. We've had increases in inflation, which have been quite large relative to where we had controlled inflation before. And what we've also seen is that prices started to fall in the energy sector, although within the last week or two, as a result of certain changes that are again taking place on the international markets, and this has to do with the reduction in output by Russia and OPEC, we've seen prices start to go back up. Now, how long these will last, and quite frankly, the changes in growth that took place were largely associated with changes in the energy sector. So if the energy sector does not grow, and the evidence is that the production, the output that is coming from the energy sector has stabilized at a much lower level, at 2.5, 2.6 billion cubic feet, as compared to 3.6 billion cubic feet in 2018, well, the chances of us growing on a continuous basis over the next 3 years or so is very low. And the rate of growth will be somewhere less than 2%. And I think Vanessa James has made the point that that is not the type of growth that is necessary to keep your economy ticking over, to move it in a positive direction. So I think it's a difficult position right now.
Now, there were three things basically that had to be done during the pandemic, and that was one, of course, economic lifeline for those businesses that needed some sort of assistance. Two, the most vulnerable in our society needed to be taken care of. And three, trying to see how best to stabilize the job market in the midst of this pandemic. Looking at those three things, how would you grade the government on performance?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is it shows up. Government spent money. It went into deficit. We had about somewhere between 9 and 15% deficit, which is significant. Now, governments all over the world did that. And that helped stabilize the economies and kept people on an even track. But after that has passed, you have to go back to a more normal level of performance. And the reality is governments cannot support the economy on an ongoing basis. There's, how shall I put it? Government earns its revenue from taxation. And taxation comes from economic profits, meaning that if the economy is growing, then government revenues will be buoyant. If the economy is not growing, government operates at a deficit, which means that it is running down reserves, foreign exchange reserves, whatever reserves that it has. And that essentially adds to inflation, but it doesn't help the long life of an economy. Ultimately, businesses have to stand on their feet, which means that they have to operate on their own, and they have to have customers. They have to be able to export to generate foreign exchange. If that is not taking place, government cannot continue to support an economy indefinitely. And that is the issue. The IMF numbers indicate that there will be some degree of growth. They project 1.5% for the next couple of years. But 1.5% is below the type of growth which is necessary to keep Trinidad and Tobago on what one would consider a growth path. In fact, the required rate of growth is something twice that, somewhere in the region of 3% is a minimum. So at 1.5%, you're below target. Now, achieving 1.5% if these circumstances will be a very significant development. It'll be a positive development. But that's the real question. Can we do that?
So you're saying just an injection of finance and funds is not going to be enough to sustain our economy as far as moving forward? Bottom line.
No, you can't. Right? Ultimately, businesses have to stand on their own. And businesses, to stand on your own, you mean you have to have customers, you have to be able to sell, you have to be able to operate in the domestic market, and you have to be able to generate foreign currency. And the reality is that 80% of our foreign currency comes from one sector. If that sector is not doing well, you can't run the country on the residual only 20%, because, and that is a deficit, you'll be running down your foreign exchange reserves, right? Which is really what we've been doing for the last, since 2011. Foreign exchange reserves have been declining. Right? So we've come from 11 billion down to about 6. And we've kind of stayed at 6 for the last year or two. Right? If the economy is not growing, if businesses are not generating, if we're not earning foreign exchange reserves, then those reserves will start to decline.
Yeah, but isn't all of this, Mr. Browne, it creates basically a domino effect, what you're saying? I mean, 5,000 retail outlets, I mean, that's the figures that was given, couldn't reopen their doors after the pandemic. They were struck hard. You have the Minister, Paula Gopi-Schoon, saying that retail and these businesses are the backbone of the economy. They help prop up the economy. If these things are not stabilized moving forward as far as generating business, having customers, then what do we have to look forward to?
All right, well, if you get sick, you go to a hospital and the doctors have to stabilize you. But you can't stay in the hospital forever. You have to come out and you have to be able to move around, and your body has to be able to sustain itself, which means you have to live a healthy lifestyle, you have to do other things, but the same for business. Government operates a transition mechanism during 2020 and 2021. Right, 2022, we've come back to a more normal state, but government cannot play the role of a hospital forever. At some stage of the game, you have to leave the intensive care unit and you have to get on your feet. That's the point I'm making. So government cannot sustain an economy by running deficits forever. That can't happen. Right, and we don't have to look far. Right, what we have to do is to look at Barbados, which ran deficits for roughly 10 years, at the end of which you ended up having to borrow from the IMF, or you have to go to Jamaica, exactly the same thing. Deficits ultimately mean that you're running down your reserves.
Understood, but doesn't this go hand in hand? I mean, one would expect the government to be somewhat of a friendly business government, to create such an environment, to start to have such a culture somewhat, to grow. But when you look at all that's taking place with VAT refunds, with registrations, with taxes upon taxes, I mean, at some point in time, the business people could only do so much. I mean, shouldn't this go hand in hand with an understanding of the role that the private sector and government has to play?
Yes, and that is precisely what is required. And I am one of those, and certainly when I was at the Ministry of Finance, myself and the public servants used to have arguments all the time with respect to VAT refunds, because it was an issue then at the time. And the answer is that you're playing with VAT refunds. The bottom line is government operates on a cash flow basis. So if, for example, I owe you a refund and I pay you back, then it means that as an effect in terms of my revenue declines. So I don't pay you. Right, then I report that I earned income. However, you, as a business, are short of funds. And guess what businesses run on? They run on money. So you are effectively borrowing. I think the level of refund element that's required at this stage is given somewhere between 5 and 6 billion. Well, effectively understating the deficit by 6 billion. And that is the difficulty we're trying to, the government is, and the public servants are attempting to, in a sense, they are what we call the gerrymandering in figures. The deficit is larger than it says it is.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's true.
Right?
And again, when you talk about the domino effect and you talk about the factors that you have to look at, crime, for example, I mean, when you have a commissioner of police that is telling business owners that you will have to perhaps get private security to go to the bank to make transactions, that in itself is another expense. We are now at 413 murders for the year. What does that do as far as foreign investment and as far as the business community?
Forget about the foreign investment part. Right? Think about it from the point of view of local investment. If, for example, you are a significant business person and you are generating cash and you are not certain about what the current environment is, that you could lose your life or somebody could rob you or somebody will want to kidnap you, would you want to invest? So forget about the foreign investment. Just consider the impact on the local business community. Right? And that's why national security is really a priority. It isn't only about foreign investment. We need not bother too much about whether people come in. What matters is whether your local businesses are going to invest. Because at the end of the day, a foreign investor will leave. What you want is people who are committed to your country and who are committed to growing the economy. And that has to do, the only thing that the only real asset a country has are its people, and their aptitudes and their drive and their desire to move forward. And if in that environment, crime is a factor, right, well, then you are reducing your capacity for growth. That's the most important.
And I think you make a lot of sense there, make quite a lot. And whose responsibility is it to create such an environment?
Well, I mean, that clearly is the responsibility of the state. I mean, there's no question about that. I think we have to accept that. In the same way, for example, we cannot continue to produce these rules which hinder business. So, for example, we talk about anti-money laundering. I mean, you ever try to open a bank within recent times? That's a nightmare. We've carried this thing to a frightful end. If you had to open an account in New York or in the States and so on, or in England, it don't take that much time. It don't take you 2 and 3 weeks to open an account. You walk with your 2 pieces of ID, we know who you are, right? But we are operating to an extent in which we are creating rules which are becoming insufferable. Right, so they are really adding to the degree of work and the amount of time it takes to do basic things.
And that's my point exactly. Don't mean to cut you, but that's my point exactly. And many Trinbagonians are frustrated by the fact that we have to go through things like this. I mean, when you look at opening a bank account, now the bank is telling you if you need to cash a check, there's going to be a fee to that. They're telling you that, there's no longer a commercial deposit line. You simply drop it in the box, and we will see how best we can, make the transaction onto your account. I mean, this is commercial deposits we're talking about. What are we really seeing here as far as these changes? Because these very same banks made some very ridiculous profits in the midst of a global pandemic. Do you believe, and I want to ask you this, do you believe that it's time that Trinidad and Tobago gets a consumer protection agency?
Well, hold on. What we really want is to ensure that we get a good service at a good price. What we have is we have oligopolies. Right? We have how many banks in the country? 5 or 6.
Right.
5, right? So it really means that the central bank really has to play a much more of a watchdog role than it is currently playing. And quite frankly, the banks have gotten away with murder where the fee structure is concerned. And there needs to have some redress and some balance where that is concerned. For example, if you operate an account, I mean, you ever calculated how much it costs you to operate an account? Even if your account has money in it, right? You are really paying the bank an accounting fee at the end of every year.
That's right.
Right, which I mean, it certainly adds up a couple $1,000, even if you're not borrowing, right? So that you are paying a percentage of your cash flow to the bank for accounting services, and at the same token, when you use electronic products, you do the same thing. Now, that's fair to some extent, but the issue is all the other things that are happening, which are in a sense reducing the level of service and increasing the cost to the customer. And the difficulty with that is that there are no very few other institutions that you could depend on to go somewhere else. That's part of the problem, right? So that small markets, when you have an oligopolistic or monopolistic situation, the customers pay. And if we add to that, and this is the point I think that where you and I will agree, if you increase the level of administrative burdens to get things done on a normal basis, well, what you really want is to reduce the amount of time, not to increase it.
Yeah, one would think so. But again, who's going to be the watchman on all of this? Who's going to guard us from this?
And that's where what you call the NGOs and professionals. I guess I have to include myself in that.
All right, but many, with all due respect, many of these NGOs and organizations are not independent of the government. I mean, look what took place in America the other day. The second largest bank has to now pay many customers because of the fact that they open up accounts without the knowledge and authorization of their clients. They open up credit card accounts, interest, bank fees, and now they have to pay back that money. Who's going to be watching in our interest, Mr. Browne? That's the thing.
Well, that's the rule. Well, we have two people supposed to be watching our interest. There's a banking ombudsman. That's one, right? And is who may not have any power, but does have the capacity to speak out, ask for certain things, and to make a judgment call. Now, what you don't want is a banking ombudsman who is a quiet fellow. You want somebody who really is a busybody, who will ask some just questions, right? And you want the same thing of your central bank,
right?
In terms of its regulatory power, right? I think even the central bank governor himself recognized. I think he made a speech, if not this year, last year, where he talked about banking needs to become easier for those who don't have bank accounts. So you remember that statement?
That's right. Yes.
Right. I think that is a recognition that it is not as simple as it ought to be. Right? And I make the point again, just opening and closing accounts is a nightmare.
Yeah.
That is we need to fix up. And that it's not that we shouldn't have anti-money laundering guidance by all means, but by definition, we need to be far more intelligent in terms of how we apply those rules.
Understood. You asked a question as always, and I must commend you for that. You always ask, what is in it for the small man? Budget is coming. Do you expect anything, at least something for the small man?
Well, I think the outlook is difficult. I mean, the reality is that we have a two-year window before the election, and people will, and governments by definition want to be re-elected, so that they will attempt to posit and portray as that they're making adjustments, which will suit the poor man or the small man. The reality is that the one thing that we need to do is government needs to become more efficient. Now, you don't include that in a budget speech, right? What you do is you make commitments to doing turnaround time. So, for example, for some time this year, you couldn't get a birth certificate or marriage certificate because things weren't working well in your registry has had some serious issues. And in fact, when you think about it, you need a government form of document for almost everything that you do, right? You have to license, you have a permit. If you get a board, if you go to birth certificate, a death certificate, which are things that you need for normal things like insurance.
Right.
You really want those things to work smoothly and easily.
All right. My final question to you as well. Do you think that there's going to be any mention of the former Petra Refinery this time?
I can't see what difference it will make if they mention it. After 5 years, if you left your car, I decided you rode for 5 years and you used it, and you came one day to, what do you think would happen? You think it would?
No, it did. Totally obsolete.
Right. Well, you'll have all different kinds of things, but you'll have to basically run the car, you'll have to do the engine, you have to service the engine. Well, that's where the refinery is. And you have to remember this refinery, when it was first built, refineries have to be maintained. One of the things when you have big capital assets, you have to spend money on maintenance. And if you have it down for a period of time, well, the maintenance expenses get reopened. And unless the price of oil is at a reasonably good price, I'm not coming to do it. And I think that's where, unfortunately, we are. I don't think we're going to see anything with that regard to that refinery never going to reopen. It won't be the first refinery that was closed in Trinidad. Trinidad and Tobago had 4 refineries. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? None of them are open now. But I think we have to take the lesson from history. It's unlikely to be open, and if government talks about it, it will talk about it in the court. I mean, the last comment that came, I think, was made by the managing director. So anybody could come and anybody could come and make us a sense of offer, right? At this stage of the game, it means that they don't have to be. That's the reality that we're talking about.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking time out this evening to link with us here on The Observer. And we will be checking in with you periodically, perhaps right after the budget and within the budget debate as well. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it.